If you're anything like me and you enjoy watching book content on YouTube, you've probably been flooded with recommendations from YouTube of booktubers who are telling you how many books they read last year. For someone like me, who is a slow reader, I almost feel like I'm falling behind in life because I'm not reading 100 plus books a year.
The truly well-read person isn't the one who has read a gargantuan number of books. It's someone who has let themselves be deeply shaped by just a few very well-chosen titles.
I want to tell you guys about the one book I read and also talk about how social media can almost make you feel dumb for not reading as quickly as everyone else or for not reading as much as everyone else. The main reason I wanted to film this video is to normalize reading a few books a year and, not feeling like a failure for not picking up 200 books in 1 year while working a full-time job, while trying to care for your family and your loved ones. I just feel like I haven't seen any videos of people who have read, even 12 or 20 books in a year. It's usually like absurd amounts of books that people are reading. I mean, I get it, this is their career. They are booktubers. But for the average person, we all know that's not quite the case. As someone who has always been a slow reader, it has affected my self-esteem, or at least I used to let it, affect my self-esteem. Even in college, I realized very quickly that my classmates were going through their assigned chapters way quicker than I was. Like, it would take me almost double the time. When you're seeing everyone else around you just like speed through things and it takes you an extra minute just to focus and understand what you're reading, you can feel like they're better than you. I remember just Googling how to read quicker. There literally were videos of people telling you how to read quicker. I don't think that's something that is possible. Also, just how our cognition works is very different, and I think there's something beautiful about that. That's not to say I don't admire people who can read, a book in a day. If I could read 7 books in 1 day and understand every single one of them, I don't know if I want to be that. That's a lot. That's a lot of plot points, a lot of characters. That's almost a disadvantage to me. I'd rather take my time and go through and devour a book, line by line, word by word, and literally eat it like a gourmet meal than just speed read through everything. I think there's something to be said about that part of things that people don't really take the time to acknowledge.
The most intelligent and thoughtful intellectual of the early church seems to have read fewer things than an average modern 8-year-old.
I was a huge reader in high school. I loved going to the library more than anything else. I loved having books on my shelf and on my bedside table that I was going through. I really, truly loved reading. What made me just take a step back from that was with high school, you get assigned a bunch of readings, and with college, the readings just get way more academic, and then you don't really have the time to read actual books that you want to read. Because I couldn't do that, I think I turned towards movies and TV shows because they could offer the same fix of storytelling and world building and character development and all that good stuff that literally make me come alive. I could get that on my TV screen. And also, as you grow older and your taste kind of evolves, it becomes a little more difficult to find books that you like and authors' voices that you really jive with. It kind of takes me a long time to get into a book, but once I do get into a book that is giving me everything that I'm looking for, it can take me a short amount of time to finish. If I was to start a book today that was 200, 300 pages, if it was a really good book, I'm pretty sure I could finish it in 2 weeks. And to me, that's impressive. If I can finish a book in under a month, I'm oh my God, that's incredible. I feel like every booktuber is quaking right now, what? But that's just me being honest. I think the quickest book I've ever read was in a week. Actually, I think 2 days. There was this one YA book I read when I was a teenager that I think I read in 2 or 3 days, because it was so good, and just the pace was it just kept going, and there was no lulls in the story.
We might pause to reflect on a fascinating aspect of the pre-modern world. Reading was held to be extremely important, but the number of new books one read was entirely by the by.
I'm slowly realizing that because I'm also a writer, that difficulty of finding authors that I really jive with is becoming even harder and also just way more difficult. Because if you're a writer, I feel like you understand writing on a different level than the average person. It's kind of like you're peeking behind the curtain. I think I also go by very high standards. I don't think I've ever rated a book 5 stars in my life. I don't think I ever will, because I just like have very unrealistic high expectations. BookTube absolutely romanticizes the idea of reading, but not actually the action. People aren't too honest about the, not too pretty sides of reading, where, you're sitting there reading a book for like 20 pages and nothing is moving. I was in a slump for a very long time. I only got out of my reading slump in, I want to say 2020, when I picked up this book called My Dark Vanessa. Yeah, that book literally grabbed me by the shoulders and was like, girl, you're reading this. It was a very intense but also highly entertaining read, to the point where like I was reading that book and like my eyes would like widen and I'd literally open up my mouth like this. And also that book asked a lot of like really deep questions. You have to like answer them on your own and like figure out what your moral code is. There are some trigger warnings in there. I have to shout out another author who literally helped me so much with my reading slump, Ellen Hildebrand. I read her book Summer of '96 in 2020. I was so excited to like be diving into a world that was so interesting, like with incredible characters, amazingly beautiful writing, and just like very interesting situations that I hadn't been in that wasn't like a TV show. It truly was a delight to read. I absolutely do like the idea of reading rather than actually sitting down and picking up a book and reading, because I do know it takes a long time for me to find something that, is gonna be my kind of book. So that's honestly kind of sad. In 2021, I cannot tell you how many nights I spent just like scrolling through my Libby app. That was honestly like a separate hobby for me, because I just loved scrolling through, looking at books, checking out what they're about, and then not reading them at all. There were some that I would start and be like, oh, this is kind of fascinating. And then I open it up, I start reading it, and I'm just like, oh my God, there's no freaking way I can keep reading this. Like, I'm so easily turned off by people's writing. If there's something in it that bothers me, I'm just like, why would I trust this author to carry me to the end of this book? I have issues. That's what we're learning here. I probably DNF'd more than like 30 books in 2021. Like, I would start books and just like abandon them. If it wasn't giving me what I wanted at any point in time, I would just be like, yeah, I'm sorry, we're not gonna do this.
The modern world has dramatically parted ways with this minimalist, ancient approach to reading. We have adopted an enlightenment mantra that runs in a very different direction, stating that there should be no limit to how much we read.
But I did read 3 audiobooks. 2 I haven't finished yet. I listened to Concrete Rose during the summertime. We took a road trip to Ocean City. Over that 2-3 hour drive, I was listening to Concrete Rose, and it was beautiful. It was a really incredible book. Like, I love that author's voice so freaking much. I need to look up her name because she deserves that. Angie Thomas, You Deserve All the Roses in the World. If you don't know, this is the sequel to The Hate You Give. I love how she explores fatherhood as a teenager and just like parenthood as a teenager in a way that is very empathetic. Like, I didn't feel like she was looking down on these kids. Like, she literally was like, this is what happened, this is what they're doing to handle it, and this is how it's going for them. Like, she did not shy away from like the ugly sides of things, and she didn't like try to romanticize anything. The other audiobook I listened to was Horror Store and also Goblin. I think they're by the same author, I'm not quite sure. Actually, no, those are 2 very different authors. So I listened to Horror Store for like the first chapter or 2. Literally the first chapter of this book is someone reading through like an IKEA shopping magazine and like telling you about every product. The story started and I just did not care about any character. Horror Story is by Grady Hendrix, by the way. Then I also listened to Goblin, which was very fascinating. I love me some good horror books. The author of Goblin actually also wrote the Bird Box book, which we all know, the Bird Box movie. Goblin is an anthology book that follows stories that all happen in this one town called Goblin, and it does get kind of dark. So I will not recommend it if you're someone who gets kind of scared like at all. Before I tell you guys the one book I actually read cover to cover, I want to say this. Being a slow reader is a good thing. I want to reassure anyone who's watching this video who feels like, oh, I need to be reading, all these insane amounts of books every year. You don't have to do that, okay? Don't feel less than just because you read, 5 books in a year, or even if you read half a book in a year.
This exhaustive approach to reading does not make us particularly happy. So, in order to ease and simplify our lives, we might dare to ask a very old-fashioned question. What am I reading for?
There's so many ways to consume stories these days. Reading is one of them, and honestly, I do want to try to read more this year. Whether you're a fast reader or a slow reader, I just think it's important for us to cherish books for what they are individually and not rush so much. I think you can gain more from reading a few very important books that, touch you in a certain way that makes you feel seen and heard, rather than like reading 100 books that, maybe there's one thing in one book that kind of like makes you feel a certain way, and then the other books are just like I don't think it's possible for 100 books to I don't know, have that same effect on you. I would say quality over quantity any day, anytime. Without any further ado, I'm going to show you guys the book I read. I had this book in physical form. I actually donated the book to a Goodwill. It's called Eternal Life by Dara. It's about a woman who has been alive for like centuries, and she cannot die. She is immortal. Basically, in every single timeline, her lover is trying to find her to reunite with her, but then she's like, no, I hate you so much. I can never forgive you for what you did to me and my family and all of that. So you're like hooked, like what did he do to her? And then you find out at the end, the book kind of like just goes downhill from there. I really did find the biblical aspects of this very interesting. Also, I really appreciated the religious discussions they would have. Overall, I would give this book like a 2.5 stars, just because the ending just like kind of dragged on for a while and just did not really pay off in the way that I was expecting it to. That's the one book I read last year. I'd love to continue the conversation in the comments below. What was your reading year like in 2021? Like, be open as much as you can. If you want to see more videos from me, then definitely hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Never forget, you deserve better. Bye.